commentary.
Okay, good morning. 107a, last line on the page. Tani Yomi Bava Kamma. Again, we're discussing here the various laws that pertain to shomer, to watchmen, most specifically to shvuot, to taking an oath. Okay, so previously we spoke about the end of Shabbos, the end of yesterday. We mentioned the opinion that says that the penalty for lying under oath, which is a chaimesh v'asham, chaimesh is you pay keren chaimesh v'asham. Keren is the principal. You have to return the principal that you lied about. You add on a fifth. Fifth, by the way, is what we call in English 25%. It's an outside fifth, so it's a fifth of the net total. And asham is a sacrifice. And the opinion of Rav Chia bar Abba, the name of Rabbi Yehudah, is that is only paid when you admit and you deny. What does that mean? It means that means that Reuven gave Shimon, 3 tables to watch, and Shimon acknowledges that one of them he damaged, but the other 2 happened by accident. He's willing to pay for 1 table. Now, generally speaking, this law of what we call moed b'mitzvos applies to money, to loans. So you loan somebody money, he says, "I pay you back half." He has to make an oath. We discussed this a little bit yesterday, and the reason is the Torah is mainly concerned that he's stalling for time. Basically what he's doing is he's saying, "Okay, I'll pay you back half now, and I'll pay the other half when I get the money." That's what the Torah says. You have to make an oath. However, Rav Chia bar Abba says the name of Rabbi Yehudah that this same principle applies to the penalty of a shvuas hashomerim, which is not a loan. You're a shomer, you're a watchman. Maybe you're even unpaid. It's still relevant. Now we get into a further statement. Bottom of last line of 107a. Tani Yomi Bava Kamma are ba shemrim. On the page. Tzrichen kfira b'mitzvos v'hayda b'mitzvos. Not only do you need it to get the penalty, you need to have moed b'mitzvos to even make the shvuah. So what he's doing basically here is he's interloping the concept of moed b'mitzvos together with shvuas hashemrim. Moed b'mitzvos again is admitting half, but this typically refers to a loan, a monetary loan. In Hebrew, the words for a financial loan are called a milv, a halva. It's a malva and a leiva. The words for handing over an item is called bekadin, and you're called in case of a borrower and a lender, it's a mashal and a shayal. So he's saying the 2 concepts get merged together. Anytime you make an oath, there has to be some sort of admission in the oath. So you admit to some amount of damage that you're willing to pay, and the rest of it you deny. Ve'elohein, what are the 4 types of shomer? Shomer chinam, this is an unpaid watchman. Vashayel, a borrower. Noisei socher, a paid watchman. V'hasocher, and a renter. Amar Rava says, "My time of Yomi Bava Kamma." What's the reason of Yomi Bava Kamma? The reason is as follows: Shomer chinam behedik ksiv bei ki huzeh. By shomer chinam, an unpaid watchman, the Torah specifically says ki huzeh, because this is it. Now, ki huzeh implies that there is some form of admission. This is the same words that are used to describe moed b'mitzvos, someone who admits half the loan. Okay, so that's someone who's shomer chinam. Shomer sachar, a paid watchman, yalaf and the sinam shomer chinam. He's learned from an unpaid watchman. V'chiyishal vav ma'asav l'yirishin. I'm sorry, shayal v'chiyishal vav ma'asav l'yirishin. Shayal is also learned from shomer chinam. And seicher, a renter, ilaman amar shomer sachar, hana shomer sachar, ilaman amar shomer chinam, hana shomer chinam. There's a debate in the Talmud whether a renter has the same responsibility as an unpaid watchman or a paid watchman. What's the difference of responsibility? An unpaid watchman is not responsible for lost or stolen. Paid watchman is responsible for lost or stolen, except in the scenario of armed robbers. So in this case, stolen is sort of some amount of minor negligence. These people were too scared to come with guns, right? They sort of stole because it was available to steal. That's why the shomer sachar is liable. If on the other hand they came with armed robbers, guns, then he would be exempt as well. Now, as a side note, again, all of these are exempt, but they have to make an oath. What's called a shvuas hashomrim. an oath of watchmen. And if they refuse to make the oath, then they have to pay instead. Today, we do not let people make a shvur deraisa, a biblical shvur. The two most common examples of shvur deraisa are shvuas hashemrim and shvuas medu miktas. And therefore, if you are such a watchman, if you happen to be an unpaid watchman and you're asked to make an oath, you instantly lose a percentage of the case. You'll be forced to compromise, because we will not allow you to make an oath. So in effect, then you have to pay. So it's worthwhile to know that if you're asked to be an unpaid watchman, you should realize that you will be responsible. Yeah. Unless you specifically specify otherwise, which you probably should. Rav Chibar Yosef says that, okay, so now we get to the next law of Shomrim. Okay, this is another statement. This is like very, very different than what we've been seeing the past couple of days. We're on 107b, about 10 lines in the top of the page. Okay, so what have we seen in the past? We've seen the opinion of Rav Sheshes that if you're a watchman and you deny responsibility, instantly you're a thief before even making an oath. Now, to counter that, we have the opinion of Rav Chibar Yosef that says no. If you say that the item was stolen, you're actually the thief. You're not liable unless you placed your hand upon it, meaning you've had a hand in the responsibility or the damage of this item. My timer, what's the reason? Elahim here means the court. So the owner approaches the court. The owner, in this case, the watchman, approaches the court. If he did not put his hand on his friend's property. Remember the b'sholach bayad askina. This is telling me that the scenario here we're referring to is a case of shlichus yad, where he laid his hand, he didn't just claim it was stolen and actually stole it, but he actually damaged the item as well. Amar lu Rav Chibar Rabba. So Rav Chibar Rabba says, "Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan." This is what Rabbi Yochanan says, but Emedes alavusa shanu. Rabbi Yochanan basically disagrees, and he says, referring to a scenario where the animals, how do they translate avusa over there? Just see this for a second. Yeah, avusa is a trough. So basically, the animal was not, there was no shlichus yad. You didn't damage the animal. You didn't overwork it or beat it or hurt it in any which way. The animal's still there in the trough and it's still eating, but you claim that it was stolen and you're actually the thief because you're lying about it and you're making an oath about it. That's sufficient to have to pay. And this was the traditional opinion. The traditional opinion is that Tainas Geneva, arguing that it was stolen, never had anything to do with shlichus yad, with actually damaging it. They're two separate things. If you say something was stolen and you lie under oath and you actually have it, then you're a thief, period. Independent of a separate scenario, which is the animal was damaged, did you have a hand in the damage or not? It's a totally separate scenario. The first opinion here, Rav Chibar Yosef, he was trying to connect them. And the Gemara is saying, Rav Chibar Rabba says in Rabbi Yochanan that no, they're not connected. Rav Zera says to Rav Chibar Rabba, who's quoting Rabbi Yochanan, it's a very interesting question here. So now we go back to the traditional opinion, right? We have Reuven is the watchman, he's watching Shimon's ox, and sure enough, he says Shimon's ox is stolen. And he makes an oath that it was stolen. So here's the question. Just for a little bit of a review, generally speaking, there are two types of arguments that a watchman can make. Let's say an unpaid watchman. He can either say it was lost or stolen. Let's first say Shimon says to Reuven, "Where's my ox?" Reuven says it was lost. Reuven's lying. Two witnesses come and testify. Reuven makes an oath in court. Two witnesses come in and testify. Reuven's lying. Reuven needs to repay Shimon an ox. Good? Nashon, you together with us? Next scenario. Shimon says to Reuven, "Where's my ox?" Can I trouble you for a glass of water? Oh, thank you. It's hot water. So Shimon says to Reuven, "Where is my ox?" So Reuven says it was stolen. And then two witnesses come and say, Reuven's lying, he has the ox still. And what happens? You get a penalty of kefil. Means you pay principal, plus you pay double for being the thief. We're together? Now, here's the question we're asking Rabbi Yehudah. Let's say Shimon says to Reuven, "Where's my ox?" So Reuven says it was stolen. Okay? And Reuven makes an oath in court. Now, it turns out, actually what happened was, Reuven beat the ox until it broke a leg. Okay? Broke a leg, the ox with a broken leg is not worth very much. And now Reuven says it was stolen. Reuven makes an oath. The witnesses come and testify. Actually, Reuven broke the ox's leg, and that's why he doesn't want to return the ox. He's lying under oath that it was stolen. So here's the question: do we say because he broke the leg of the ox, so he's liable for breaking the leg before he has an opportunity to make an oath? So actually, the oath, in a certain sense, is a true oath. Why? Because typically, who owns the ox when it's entrusted into a watchman's possession? The original owner, right? But once you break the leg, now the watchman is culpable because the watchman damaged the ox. So the truth of the matter is, the ox is no longer in the original owner's domain, and Reuven is quasi lying about it. But because the ox is no longer in the original owner's domain, his lying about thievery is not considered sufficient to require him to pay kefil. This is the question. Or maybe not. Or maybe we say, no, you lied about it when it was stolen. You actually had it. You say it's stolen, you lie about it under oath. That is an act of thievery. And therefore, you should have to pay kefil. You have the question? Together? So, is Rabbi Yehudah saying specifically you're liable on thievery when you didn't break a leg? But if you broke a leg, so then you actually, now that you broke a leg, so now you own it, meaning the shomer takes over the ownership and has to reimburse the original owner cash. So so therefore you can't make an oath that it was stolen because you actually own the animal, and you would not have to pay kefil if you lied under oath. Kefil meaning the double payment. Even if it was standing on its trough, and also if you broke a leg, even meaning also. Both scenarios you'd have to pay kefil. He said, I didn't hear a direct answer to this. However, I heard a similar answer. The Amar Vasi says the name of Yehudah. It's an interesting scenario. The guy says it was lost. He lies under oath. Then he says it was stolen and lies under oath again. He's exempt. My timer. Presumably, the first lie under oath, which was a lie that it was lost, now makes the watchman the actual owner of the animal. He takes over the ownership because he lied under oath. And therefore, the second oath is not valid. One second. And similarly, just like you can acquire the animal by lying under oath, you probably could acquire it by breaking a leg as well. That was the implication of the resolution. So Amar Leis, he says to him, no, that's not the reason. The reason why he does not have a penalty is because he's fulfilled his obligation. In other words, the Torah gives a prescription. You have a fight between a watchman and the one who entrusts the watchman with the item to watch. How do we resolve that fight? You make an oath. The first oath resolves the dispute. The second oath is not a Torah-prescribed oath. And therefore, there's no kefil. You have to follow the rule. The rule is you make an oath. You make an oath that it was lost, fine, done. The situation's over now. It's resolved. You don't have to pay because you follow the prescription. Now that you make another oath, that's totally irrelevant to the case. Nobody was asking you for another oath. Or maybe they were, but they had no right to ask you. It made no difference. It was not a court prescribed oath. The court did not ordain you to make the oath, and therefore it's not valid. And when I say the court did not ordain it, meaning the court could not ordain it because there's no reason for them to demand it. Fundamentally, the oath was already made. You'd have to have some other reason for the court to ask for a new oath, and then maybe you would pay kefil. Okay, so therefore there's no, the fact that whether you acquire it or not by a false oath or by breaking a leg is not relevant to the discussion. Itmanami, Amr of Oven, Amr of Eloy, Amr of Yechanan, Atoyin Tainas Aveda Bikodav Nishba. Somebody says it was lost, makes an oath. Then he says it was stolen, Vinishba, and he makes an oath. Ubo Adam and witnesses come, the whole thing, he lied twice. Potter, he's exempt from the penalty of kefil, double payment. Why? Because he filled the prescription by the first oath, which was false, that it was lost. Amr of Sheshes. We continue on with the laws of the oaths of Shomrim, of watchmen. Hatoyin Tainis Ganav Bikodin. Kibun Shesholach Bayad Potter. If somebody claims that the item was stolen, and then he actually lays his hands on it, he breaks a leg, Potter, he's exempt. My time. The watchman approaches the court. Potter. If he actually broke a leg, then he actually would be exempt from the oath. Okay.
What line are we on? Starting with
Rav Nachman. We're about 3/4 of the way down on 107b. Okay, 1 second. Yeah. So in other words, once he breaks a leg, then he's exempt from an oath. In other words, he admits to damage, then there's no oath. Even if initially he said it was stolen, and then he says, "Oh, it broke a leg. I broke the leg." There's no shvur. There's no oath. Amar of Nachman. Nachman says, there are 3 oaths that we make every person make. So in other words, the guy says lost or stolen. He has to make 3 oaths. What are the oaths? Shvua shloi peshati ba. Okay, it wasn't that I was reckless and careless. I took the animal out without a leash or something, or I didn't close the door at night. Shvua shelo shalachti bayad, an oath that I did not lay my hands on it. I didn't, beat it up so badly that it jumped over the fence and ran away. And shvua she'ena b'shusi, and another oath that it is not in my domain. I say that it's lost, and it's not lost on my property. It's lost outside of my property. Okay, my love, shvua shelo shalachti bayad, dum de shvua she'ena b'shusi. Presumably, the status of all the shvuas are the same. We'll explain. Ma shvua she'ena b'shusi. Let's say a guy makes an oath that it isn't in his property. When it turns out it is on his property, chayev, he has to pay. Correct? And presumably, if he lies under oath that he did not lay his hands on it, and it turns out he did lay his hands on it, he would be liable for the false oath. This seems to contradict the opinion of Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says if you lay your hands on it, you don't have any oath in the first place. So why are you making this oath? If you're lying about the oath, there would be no penalty. If it turns out that you actually did lay your hands on the animal, there's no penalty because the oath was not. You had no right to make the oath. So Amar Leis, he says to him, no. It's similar to the other oath, the oath that he makes that he's not negligent. Let's say it turns out he was negligent. He claims the animal was stolen. Turns out he invited the robbers in. In that case, there's no penalty of kefil. There's no penalty of kefil. He isn't actually the thief. He's responsible for negligence, not for thievery. And therefore, there's no penalty. And we still make him make the oath. So we still make him the oath, even though even though if it turns out that he actually broke the animal's leg, he would be exempt from the penalty of kefil. Okay. Boy, Roman Bar Chama is a very interesting question. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll go through the question quickly, but then we'll explain the question as we set up the differentiating scenario. Okay, so we have moment hamachayve kefil. When somebody makes an oath, right? And he says the animal was stolen. Turns out he's a liar. He is the thief. Okay, so he pays kefil. He has to pay twice. There's now a financial payment and there's an oath, false oath. Okay, let's continue a little bit. What's the scenario? He makes an oath that he stole it. that it was stolen, and he swears about it, and then he lies. Okay, so there's a very important distinction here. Let's clarify something very important here. In making these oaths, there's a general rule, okay? Anytime you make a false oath and admit to it, then the penalty is, it's not really a penalty. The proper way to say this, the atonement is Karen, Chaimesh, Va'osham. Principle, a fifth, and a sacrifice. Okay, this is true of any oath that a person makes, whether the oath was in court or whether it was out of court, whether it was court prescribed or whether it was not court prescribed. Okay, it's true of any oath. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't have to be court sanctioned. It makes no difference. You make an oath, and by the way, it doesn't have to relate to monetary matters either. Be an oath about anything. You promise you're going to cross the street and you don't cross the street. You admit that you was a mistake, or let's say this would have to be shua sha'avar. So you say something happened, you cross the street, you didn't cross the street, you'd have to atone by Karen Chaimish V'Asham, bring a sacrifice. In this case, there's no money, so there'd be no fifth, but the fifth would only be when you lied about money. Okay, now, in this scenario, the guy first, now, the law of kafel, paying twice, this is very, very limited. This is a very specific type of oath. It's an oath in court that the court sanctioned. And it has to be Shavuos HaShomrim. So you're a watchman, you claim it was stolen, you lie about it under oath in court as the Torah prescribes it. The penalty is you pay kafel, you pay twice, once you're discovered as a liar. So here's a scenario. The guy made a court-sanctioned oath that it was stolen. And then he made an oath outside of court, let's say, or anywhere, it doesn't make a difference, that instead of stolen, it actually was lost.
But if it happens if his oath happens outside of court, is the legal standing?
The second oath, the first oath was a proper oath.
Right, but the second oath was not. So
the second oath has no legal standing in terms of the question of shomrim. However, it does have a legal standing as an oath. And the law of all oaths, and this is a halachic law, not a financial law, is that the penalty of an oath is karen chaimish v'asham. Right? You got to pay principal, fifth, and sacrifice.
Right.
The penalty, the atonement, I'm sorry. That's the atonement. So here's the question. Turns out the guy was lying about both. He is the thief. So now let's try to evaluate this. From the perspective of the first oath he lied about, he has to pay kafel. It was a proper oath, right? It's a kafel. He said it was stolen, he lied about it, we have witnesses, he lied, he pays kafel. That's clear. Because he pays kafel, now here's the question. On the question of this money, he's already paying double. Is it that we consider the kafel payment to also include a chaimish payment? Because 200% equals 125% as well, plus a little bit more, some remainder. Right? So in this case, we should say that he does not, even though he lied about a second oath, he's already undergone the penalty by the kafel. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we say no? The reason why, typically speaking, you're in a regular scenario, you pay kafel. What about the fact that you lied under oath? You should pay karen chaimish v'asham, principal of fifth, and a sacrifice. So typically, it's the same oath, right? The same oath that you make that you're paying kafel on is the same oath that you'd have to pay karen chaimish v'asham. So we say that you're getting a more severe penalty, and therefore you're exempt from the chaimish, from the fifth. Right? Under normal circumstances, we only have one oath. The guy says he stole it. And then the witnesses come and he admits he was lying. He doesn't pay a fifth. Why not? Because he's already paying a much more severe penalty for the same oath. But over here, it's two separate oaths. Oath number one is gets a penalty of kafel. Oath number two was outside of court, not a legal matter. But because it's a separate oath, maybe you should have to pay chaimish again. So is it the money itself? Kafel includes always a chaimish, even if it's two separate oaths. Or do we say no, it's the oath that's the problem? You're getting a more severe penalty for that oath, but where it's two separate oaths, then you would get a separate penalty. So you pay 225%. Together.
So does he pay two?
Let's continue. Let's see. Let's find out. Okay. Okay, so we have 1 second. Where are we here? 1 second. Hey, Kedami, last line of 107b. Going to Ton Tainas Ganav. He says it was stolen. Vinishban, he lies about it. Because of a Ton Tainas Alvad, and then he says it was lost. Vinishban, he lies about it. He makes an oath, but this oath is not a court-sanctioned oath. It's, let's say, outside of courts. And he makes an oath about it, and he lies. And the witnesses come on the first one. He lied about it. He actually has it. And then he admits he lied about the second oath. What's the story? Do we look at the financial payment? He's paying more than 125%, and therefore he doesn't have to pay chaimish. He doesn't have to pay fifth. I don't know. It's shavua mechayv kefil patrosim min chaimish. It's the oath that pays kefil that exempts a fifth from that same oath. However, if a hosh shvua basraisa hod lo kamechayv like kefilo to chayve chumsha. But the second oath that we say that the second oath you don't pay. On the second oath you on the second oath you pay you are not paying kefil, so therefore you should not have to pay a chaimish, should not have to pay a fifth. I'm sorry, because in the second oath you're not paying kefil, you should have to pay a fifth. Amar Rava says, Toshma. Let's evaluate this. Amar la'echad min ashok. He says to somebody in the marketplace, Hechan shayri, where is my ox? Shaganafta that you stole. V'hu aimer loiganafti. He says, I didn't steal it. Mashbiachani, I want you to make an oath. V'amar omen, and he says amen. Okay, very interesting. So over here, he goes to a random stranger, right? This guy was not a watchman. Goes to a stranger. He says, where's my ox? I says, I don't know. I'm sorry, more than that. He says to the guy, where's my ox that you stole? The guy says, what are you talking about? I never stole your ox. So he says, make an oath. So he says, okay, I make an oath. It turns out he did steal it. Okay, now, hold on a second. This is not a watchman. If he steals it, then he has to pay kefil. Why? Not because he lied under oath, because he stole it, right? Mm. So over here, we have a guy who steals, and he lies about it under oath, in a non-court prescribed oath, because he wasn't a watchman. You have no right to make a shuas hashem if you never watched the animal. So here's a very similar situation, right? We have an oath about stealing, but he was never obligated to make the oath. And we have an action of stealing, which requires you to pay kefil. Pay twice. So Misham Tashlum Kefil. V'im Haidem Yatzma, and if he admits, Misham Karen v'Chaimish v'Asham, he pays a fifth. V'Hacha Edim Hudim Mechayv like Felo. The witnesses are making him pay kefil for stealing. Haidem Yatzma, if he admits, then he would pay a Chaimish. Avo Haida Achar Edim Loi. If he admits before the witnesses come, then he pays a fifth. But if he admits after the witnesses come, like he does not pay a fifth. Why doesn't he pay a fifth? Because the kefil that he pays includes a fifth. Even though the kefil is being paid for the action of stealing, and the oath, which again, this is not a shuas hashomrim, this is not a legal monetary oath. You still would not have to pay a chaimish fifth on that oath. This oath does not make him pay kefil because it's not a shuas hashomrim. The fellow on the street was a random stranger. He was not a watchman. You should have to pay chaimish. We see from here. We see from here that it's the money, the monetary payment of kefil that includes a fifth in it, and therefore you're exempt from it lying under oath about the same scenario. You'd be exempt from the fifth. Shema Mina, it's a very good proof. Together? What?
Not really.
No. Did you review this? Let's go through this again, very briefly. The question here is fundamentally, every time you lie under oath, there's potential. Every lie under oath has a. If you admit to lying under oath at any point, whether it's before or after witnesses, there is a atonement process called Karen Chaimish V'Asham.
Double a fifth.
No,
Oh,
Karen is principal.
Oh, okay, right.
Principal Chaimish Asham. This is true of any oath that involves finances. There's no finances, it's just an asham, it's just a sacrifice. And this has nothing to do with any monetary legal oath that you might be required to take. It's any shvua whatsoever. Now, the question the Gemara has is that anytime a guy lies under oath about stealing, if it's a shvua hasharmi, so he's a watchman, he says it was stolen, lies under oath, he is the thief. So now, let's say he admits after the witnesses come. So the witnesses say he has to, because the witnesses came, he has to pay kefil. Because we treat tayin as ganav, bipikadin, as a ganav. Lying under oath as a watchman is the same as a thief. Therefore, you have to pay kefil. Now, what about the fact that later, after the witnesses came, he admitted? There's a regular law of shomrim, the regular law of shvuah. You have to pay karen chaimish v'asham. Does he need to pay the chaimish? No, he doesn't. Why doesn't he need to pay a chaimish? Is it because he's getting a more severe penalty for that oath? Or is it because in the financial circumstances, he's already paying the chaimish? Because kefil includes a chaimish. Double includes a fifth. And the difference here is resolved when you can split away the oath from the incident. For example, the Gemara's initial question was where there were two oaths on the same incident. One oath was a legal binding oath in court prescribed. That was the oath that it was stolen. And then he made a separate oath, which has nothing to do with the courts. The court never asked him to. It wasn't done in court. Maybe even the victim didn't ask for the court for the oath. Maybe he just did it on his own as soon as he walked out of court. And the oath was slightly different. Instead of stolen, it was lost. So now he pays kefil for lying under oath about stealing after witnesses came. Okay, that's fine. Now, do we say it's the kefil that includes the fifth? So in this incident, it's the same incident. He's already paying 200%, that includes 25%. Or do we say, no, it's the oath that's the question. It's in this case, it's two separate oaths. So it's true that the fifth of the oath of stealing, you've already paid. But the fifth of the oath of it's lost, you haven't paid. That's the question. The resolution is another similar story. This is like a real good one, real interesting way to resolve the question. Very sharp resolution here, which is where a guy steals. He's an actual thief. An actual thief pays kefil regardless of whether or not he lies about it. Doesn't need to lie. You steal, you pay kefil, unless you admit before the witnesses come. It happens to be that in this case, the victim has deep suspicions about who the robber is. He runs over to the robber. He says, "You stole my ox." He says, "I don't know what you're talking about. Never stole it." He says, "Yeah, go make an oath." This is not a court-prescribed oath. There's no such thing as an oath here. The Torah only gives oaths for shomrim, for watchmen. He's not a watchman. He never accepted responsibility. He doesn't admit to being a watchman. He's a random stranger on the street. This is not a court-prescribed oath. This has nothing to do with the court. As a matter of fact, the guy didn't even have to prompt the oath. The guy could have just sworn his own. Doesn't make a difference. This is not a court-required oath. It's not a financial oath. The guy says an oath, and I didn't steal it. And it turns out he did steal it. He admits to stealing it, so he has to pay kefil for stealing, and he has to pay a fifth for lying under oath. Clearly, in this case, it's the same incident. He's paying twice for. Why? Because it's two separate. It's kefil for the event and a chaimish for the shvuah. Clearly, then the shvuah, the reason why on the same oath you only pay kefil and not pay chaimish is because it's the oath that's the question. You're already paying double for this oath, not the incident that's the question. And in this case, because the incident and the oath are two separate things, there's an act of stealing and an oath of lying. Therefore, you have to pay keren b'chaimish. The same thing would be true if you lied twice. You're paying kefil for the court-appointed oath of stealing, and you're paying chaimish for the voluntary oath that you took, which has nothing to do with the court, of lost. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm borrowing Gemara for a second here. Okay. Betray Gavri Mai. You have a fifth and kefil with two different people. What's the story? What's the scenario? So you have two people that were watching the ox. So what happened was, two people were watching the ox. One guy is, they say, they say that it was stolen. Okay. One guy, they both lie under oath. One guy admits, and one guy witnesses had to come for him to admit. In other words, okay, do we say that the same person can pay chaimish and kefil. But over here, it's two separate people. They could pay. So one guy pays half kefil for half of his stealing. The other guy pays chaimish on half of the animal for lying under oath and admitting to it. Or do we say that it's never possible to have an incident where you can have it's never possible to have an incident where you can have half of it where half the money is being paid as kefil and half the money is being paid as chaimish. It's depending on the incident, not the people involved. Gemara says, it remains unresolved. Okay. Boy Rav Papa, the following question. Trei chumshi a trei kfeli b'chad gavra mai. You have two kefils or two chaimish for the same person. How is that possible? Hechidami, what's the scenario? The tointain is avad v'nishba v'hoida v'chazer the tointain is avad v'nishba v'hoida. The guy makes multiple oaths. Ina mikan the tointain is gana v'nishba ubo edim v'chazer tointain is gana v'nishba ubo edim. Okay, so the first scenario is either he lies twice under oath about the item being lost. Does he pay multiple fifths? Or if he lies under oath that it was stolen, the witnesses come, he lies under oath, okay, but instead of giving it back, he lies again under oath. It's really a second incident at that point, because he's already obligated by the court to pay back. He lies again under oath, same thing, witnesses come, he's lying. Do we say this, ultimately speaking, is one act of taking? There's one item in question, so you can't pay kefil and chaimish twice over it. This is also really two separate financial incidents, two separate oaths in the case of lost, or really two separate stealings, even though it's the same item, because they went to court twice over it. Same thing. So Gemara says Toshmad Rava resolves this at least part way, because Rava points out that you can pay multiple chaimishes on the same item. And this we saw previously in the Gemara. If a guy makes 5 different oaths on the same item, and each one of them he admits to was false, then he pays a chaimish for each oath. He can pay 5/5, right? So pay 225%. We do not resolve the question of kefil. Kefil doesn't remain resolved. But chaimish, at least we know that you can pay multiple fifths. For each oath, you pay another fifth. Okay, let's continue. Tavu bailam l'shomer v'nishba v'shilam. Okay, tavu bailam l'shomer. The owners ask the watchman v'nishba v'shilam. Okay. Okay, let's give it some background. Go right into it. Okay, so basically the Shimon comes to Reuven. Shimon says to Reuven, "Where is my ox?" So Reuven says it was stolen. And not only that, I'll make an oath for you. You know, I feel so bad. Even though I made an oath, I'll also pay back for it. Right? So he's nishba v'shilam. He pays, but he makes an oath and he pays back. Then they find the thief. Kefil l'mi. Who gets to keep the kefil? Okay, well, this is sort of an introduction. We'll continue for another 2 minutes or so, but we'll really have to see this again tomorrow. But this is a fundamental question. So you have a robber, he steals, right? Let's say, for example, we have Zavulon steals an ox from Yisachar, right? So Zavulon has to pay back kefil to Yisachar. What happens now if Zavulon steals an ox from Yisachar, but Yisachar is not the owner? Yisachar is a watchman for Yehudah, right? Mm-hmm. So now, Yisachar says, you know what, I don't want to make an oath, I'll just pay you back. In this case, Yisachar sort of acquires the stolen ox because he doesn't want to exempt himself. He pays back. And now, if the thief is found, Yisachar gets to keep the kefil, not Yehudah. If, on the other hand, Yisachar says, I'm going to exempt myself with an oath, so then Yehudah gets to keep the kefil because he's the one who suffers the loss.
Zvulun is done.
Zvulun's a thief.
Yeah, but he washed his hands. He paid kefil and he's done.
What he has to do with God is a separate question. Okay. The question is who gets to keep his kefil?
Okay.
Who's he paying the kefil to? Right. Is he paying? So again, if the watchman paid for the item, so then he acquires the item and it's his item that was stolen now, he gets to keep the kefil. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't pay for the item, he makes the oath, then it goes back to the original owner. Mm-hmm. And now we'll have to try to figure out what is the key component here. Is it the paying or is it the oath? Because in this scenario, he did both. He made an oath and he paid for it. So we can start. Abaya says, Labal Pekadin. It goes back to the original. It goes back to the original owner. Rav Amar Lemisha Pekadin Etzla. It goes to the watchman. Abaya Amar Labal Pekadin. Abaya says it goes to the original owner. Kivan Atrache B'Shavua. Since the watchman made an oath, even though he paid for it, because he made an oath, he could have exempted himself. So therefore, he does not get to keep the kefil, even if he paid for it. Ultimately speaking, he exempted himself by making an oath. Therefore, he doesn't get to keep the kefil. He would get the principal though, Rav, because he did pay for it. Rav Amar Rav says, to the watchman. Why? Kivan the shilam, because he paid for it. So making like fail, he gets to keep the kefil he acquires a stolen item. And they're debating about how to read a Mishnah, and we'll have to continue reading the Mishnah tomorrow. Have a great day. Yeah.